In my Father's house there are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you. I'm going there to make a place for you. These are the comforting words of Jesus that were recorded in the Gospel of John at John chapter 14, verses 1 through 3. They are spoken at many funeral services and serve as a reminder that Jesus has arranged a place in heaven for each of us. Home is already waiting for those who put their faith in Jesus, see Romans 10, verse 9. Jesus instructed that whoever believes in him will continue the work that Jesus did during his ministry here on earth. Those works include teaching God's principles for daily living, works done in the name of Jesus, that is, works that are in keeping with Jesus' nature and character, will be blessed. See John 14, verses 12 through 14. Believing in Jesus and working like he did does not come spontaneously. These are learned behaviors. Ideally, believing in Jesus and continuing his works begins at the earliest stages of childhood. The wisdom of King Solomon includes that familiar admonition, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old he will not depart from it. That's Proverbs 22:6. This Sunday is Mother's Day, a time to honor mothers and those who fulfill a mother's role. Mothers not only give birth to their children, they nurture and teach them so that one day their child becomes independent and is able to continue the cycle of life by nurturing his or her own children. The parenting role we recognize today often rests on the shoulders of mothers, but frankly, it's a role that each of us is called to fulfill. As Christians, you and I are in a position to provide the tools and role modeling that enable the next generation to believe in Jesus and to continue his ministry. Jesus explained to Nicodemus that believing in Jesus and his ministry is a matter of being born again. That's John 3:3. New Christians, like newborn babies, need mothering. They need bonding and fellowship like that given by a mother to her newborn child. New Christians require role models and teachers so that they can follow the teachings of Jesus, understand his ways, and form a deeper relationship with Jesus. New Christians in the usual cycle of life mature eventually so that they become independent of their early mentors and become mother figures in their own right for other new Christians. The Great Commission calls on Christians to make disciples of all nations. That, of course, is Matthew 28, verse 19. That means that each of us has a mothering role, a responsibility to nurture the next generation of believers. In Old Testament times, parents were instructed to impress God's commandments on their children, to talk about his commandments continuously. That's Deuteronomy 6, verse 7. Similarly, the New Testament instructs each of us to teach and model the ways of Christ for the next generation of believers. Take a look at Titus chapter 2, verses 1 through 8. Making disciples involves mothering others. So consider these questions for introspection, if you will. Question number 1, mothers and mother figures are called upon to teach and model God's ways for the next generation of believers. What steps are you taking to influence and to teach new believers? Question number 2, part of the teaching process outlined in Deuteronomy 6, verses 8 and 9 is to demonstrate our beliefs in God by displaying them on our door frames, gate posts, and even in adornments on ourselves. What outward demonstrations are you making to model Christian beliefs to the outside world? And question number 3, a mother's role includes a time of letting go, so that the next generation can stand on their own understanding of Christian principles that they have learned and so that they can live out their responsibilities for building on behalf of the kingdom of Christ. How are you turning over the reins for Christian leadership to the next generation? Motherhood is not an easy role. Children sometimes rebel and reject parental instruction. Nevertheless, laying a firm foundation for Christian newborns is part of that cycle of life. And mothering by teaching principles for Christians, for Christian living, is necessary to achieve that homecoming that Jesus introduced in that opening line in the 14th chapter of John's Gospel. So let's honor mothers and mother figures, and let's also shoulder our own responsibility to teach and model Christian principles for that next generation of believers.